Welcome, everyone. We're glad you could join us for the second session of our Document Accessibility Workshop series. This webinar is made available by the Northwest Higher Education Accessibility Technology Group. Northwest HEAT is a joint project of the Orbis Cascade Alliance and NWAC, the Northwest Academic Computing Consortium. Our mission is to advance our common goal of ensuring that digital services, systems, and resources are equitably accessible to all users. Our overarching goal is to cultivate a community of practice among faculty and staff who support digital accessibility on their campuses. To do this, we provide a series of professional development opportunities, such as this webinar, and we share best practices and resources through a collaborative knowledge base. If you'd like more information about the work of Northwest HEAT, as well as other workshops in the Document Accessibility series, we invite you to visit northwestheat.org. You can also communicate with us through the poll that we will share at the end of this session. Before we introduce our facilitator, we'll take a moment to share some housekeeping details. This session includes a chat, which means you can submit questions to our facilitator throughout the session. You can also use the raise hand in the React menu or just unmute your mic to ask a question. This session includes captioning. You'll find instructions on how to access captioning in our Zoom chat. And this session is being recorded, and the video will be shared at northwestheat.org. Our facilitator for the Document Accessibility Workshop series is Michele Joy Bromley, Manager of Digital Accessibility and Content in the Office of Information Technology at Portland State University. And now we turn it over to Michele.
Good morning, everyone. Alrighty, so for those of you who didn't get a chance to attend the first session in the series, Document Accessibility, as folks have shared from Northwest HEAT, there is a recording available, and I absolutely encourage y'all to watch that presentation afterward if you're able to kind of get that foundation for Google Docs and Microsoft Word accessibility. Today's session, as you may have seen from the description online and heard from our Northwest HEAT representatives, is a hands-on practice session. So I have not prepared any slides. I am here to answer any and all questions. It's more like y'all are giving a presentation and I'm helping you through it. So I did bring one example of a Google Doc to kind of go over that is, folks can testify in the last 10 minutes. I was going through and trying to make it as inaccessible as possible. It was a very painful activity. But I'd like to start by inviting y'all. If you've got a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word document that you've been tasked with making accessible, or you've decided this needs to be accessible, so you're working on it on your own, let's dive in.
Michele, I just have a question. So we're a Microsoft campus.
I'm so
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We are a Microsoft campus. I'm at University of Idaho. We work with Boise State, who is a Google campus quite often, and I run a community of practice for accessible content creation.
Yeah.
One of the people I run that with is a screen reader user. She has low vision and talks pretty consistently about the difficulty navigating Google Docs slides and sheets, just from the standpoint of that it's embedded in a browser. So general shortcuts that would get her to menus require extra keystrokes because, your Alt F will bring up the file menu for the browser versus bringing up the file menu for Google or whatever else. But I mean, you work so much more with those platforms. I'm curious what your experience has been in relationship to doing all the things that we normally would do in Word in Google Docs, and then if you run into any issues sharing those Google Docs or with people navigating them.
That is a great question. It's interesting because up until really the last few years, even though Portland State University is a Google Workspace school, that's sort of our native digital authoring environment, my recommendation to folks when creating documents was always to use Microsoft Word if possible. Microsoft Word or what's it called? Not Adobe Illustrate, but the different Adobe authoring product. And I can't
InDesign, we use InDesign a lot.
Yeah, InDesign, there you go. Yeah, InDesign and Microsoft Word for design and sharing. And I do still recommend Microsoft Word and InDesign as authoring tools when your end goal is a PDF. Only because the transition between Microsoft Word and then, of course, InDesign to a PDF through an accessible PDF editor like Foxit PDF editor or Adobe Acrobat Pro is going to be a lot easier than a transition from Google Docs to PDF.
Yeah, it seems like without Grackle, there's really very little.
Yeah, and that is still my recommendation when the end goal is a PDF. But if the goal is to share an editable document, collaborative editing, then really in the last few years, Google Workspace in general has made some really significant progress in terms of navigability for collaborative editing. So my recommendation now, again, still, if the end goal is a PDF, it's going to be easier as a content designer to use Microsoft Word as a starting point. But Google Docs is not, it doesn't have, doesn't quite measure up yet to Microsoft Word in terms of ability to generate accessible content easily. But in terms of navigation with adaptive technology, the big thing, and they don't advertise this enough in their getting started and usability documentation, but one of the big barriers to engaging with Google Docs in an equitable way using adaptive technology is if Braille mode isn't turned on, which is not intuitive. If you're a screen reader user, you're using VoiceOver or JAWS or NVDA.
Right, not necessarily Braille.
Yeah, you're not thinking about turning Braille mode on unless you're using a refreshable Braille display. But most of Google Docs accessible navigation, they designed it kind of in concert with working with refreshable Braille displays. So actually, if you turn on Braille support, turn on screen reader support and Braille support in your accessibility settings, it is significantly more accessible than it's been over the last several years. And there are, see if I can grab them.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I actually I had to dig and attended a couple of Google presentations on their accessibility improvements over the last few years to find that information. And I'm looking right now. Let's see, I found the article Use Braille Display with Google Docs, which even if you're not using the Braille display, it tells you how to turn on Braille support. But I'm also looking for, let's see, yes. There's an article on screen reader short keys with Google Docs that is just really helpful. Okay. And I know there's shortcuts to let's see, the shortcut to turning on screen reader and Braille support, I believe, is Control-Alt-Z on Windows, Command-Option-Z on Mac, but let me go. All right, here we go. This is a really solid support article. So I'm going to pop this in here into the chat.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, this is a really helpful resource. It is, like any user interface, whether cloud or not, it is it is a little bit of a different experience if folks have been, and it goes either way, right? If folks have been using Google Workspace with adaptive technology for a long period of time, and then they go to use the Microsoft Office suite, it's a very
Totally.
different
Yep.
experience. You've got the whole macro situation going on to access the ribbon. Which for those of you who don't know, if you're looking to get a little faster with Microsoft Word or looking to minimize your mouse use, using the Alt key pulls up the ribbon in Microsoft Office, the ribbon menu at the top, and there's it's like a whole language that you can learn, like in the way that in general environment on a Windows computer, Control-Shift-V pastes unformatted text. In Microsoft Word, it's Alt-HVT. So it's definitely a learned experience with either environment, but I have found over the last few years that Google Docs is a lot more navigable with adaptive technology than it used to be. It's just, it's just a learning curve.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else have any questions or an example document to look at?
Hi, this is Sagan from OSU.
Hi.
I had the last session, I had a question about how do you mark up English or non-English languages when it's like jumping back and forth. And I actually found out the answer to it. So hopefully this will like type in correctly, but I just dropped some instructions on how to add a language quick tool to Word. So once you get it added to your quick bar, you can just start highlight a word, toggle the language, and go back and forth. And then I had a secondary, like a follow-up question to that, which is I was editing a document that had a lot of Latin because it was using the Latin name for a species. And I was trying to figure out do I need to change the language on that into Latin for everything, or would it be okay to skip it?
Oh, that is definitely kind of borders on the subject matter expert question for like the academic topic. And the reason I say that is because often scientific names for things, though they're Latin names or have the Latin roots, they'll still show up in the sort of the English language dictionary that feeds in associated screen reading software. So I think it would really depend on context, similar to when you're creating alt text and you're thinking about context and what you would put in there. Are these uncommon Latin terms that the pronunciation would not be in like a native English dictionary? Then yeah, I'm probably going to want to put foreign language tags around it. But if not, and this is coming from a non-STEM person, so I've definitely relied on a lot of academic subject matter experts distributed around the university when I was working as an alternative format specialist, because I would need clarification on, okay, oh, these are maybe specialized terms that are going to require tags, or these are common scientific names that are just foreign to me. I do see that someone put in the chat, working on fixing a Word document, starting with fixing the document structure, the outline view. Yes. Oh my goodness. That is, you know what? In fact, let's take a quick look. The example that I have up is a Google Doc, but same thing. In terms of accessible design, like one of my best design tips and tricks in Microsoft Word and in Google Docs is to pull up that navigation pane, because for sighted content designers, that's going to be a really straightforward visual way of showing Uh-oh, my heading structure is not great. And I apologize in advance for this Google Doc. It's a one-sheet flyer that we created for an event a few years ago. And we spent some time making it inaccessible this morning, and it hurts a little bit to share this with y'all, but we're gonna fix it together and then we're gonna feel a lot better. So let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll take a look at that navigation pane. All right, are y'all seeing a flyer that says no mouse activity for those of you with sighted access to the document? We see a couple of thumbs up and a couple of shaking heads. For those of you who cannot see the document, this is a hashtag no mouse activity presentation handout. For those of you who may not be familiar with the No Mouse Challenge, it's a very cool challenge put together by University of Washington's Do It Center several years ago, probably more than several years ago. It's been around for a while, but it's a great option when you're looking for a quick activity. In our case, it was for a we call it Party in the Park at Portland State University. We've got these beautiful park blocks right down the center of campus. And when folks start school in the fall, we've got a party in the park, which is an optimistic way of describing essentially a department fair, where we have booths and we're sharing things with folks. And this was an activity that we put together for the Office of Information Technology for folks to think about accessible design. So let's say that someone else created this document, and it got sent to me. Hey, Michelle, this thing's got to be accessible before we share it, because gosh, it would be kind of embarrassing if we had a digital and physical handout for an accessibility activity that was not in fact accessible. So one of the first things I'm going to do, I love that idea. I'm coming over to the left-hand side of the screen, and I'm opening up my essentially my tree view. They call it a navigation view in Microsoft Word. It's now called a tab view in Google Docs, and I'm seeing that there might be some problems. There's a list. It immediately populated with a list of the headings in this document. And lucky me, there are headings in this document. So if I were to run this thing through an automated accessibility checker, the automated checker would say, good job, friend. There is heading structure in this thing. They might grab me if I've got more than one heading too. Automated checkers are or heading one. Automated checkers are getting pretty good at grabbing that. But outside of that, it's difficult for an automated accessibility checker to grasp if you've kind of got things mixed up, because good heading structure does seem a little mixed up. You've got your heading 1, and then you've got your subsections, heading 2, and then subsections within those heading 2 sections. And how you design your document and how many subsections you have and how many subsections you have is going to be unique for each document. So it's going to be hard for an automated checker to tell the difference. Likewise, historically, it's been pretty hard for automated accessibility checkers to catch when a heading has been used where it shouldn't be. So I'm seeing 5 headings listed here. I see hashtag no mouse challenge. I see a couple of keyboard ... I see for navigating within you ... for interacting with form ... Again, these are abbreviations of headings that appear throughout the document. But what I'm seeing is a very interesting curve showing me that the first heading that they've got in the document appears to be sub to the headings that come before it. That's interesting. That probably means that my heading structure is very off. So if I go into the body of the document, the title, and I'm just going to, let's see. This is not really a presentation handout. This is just a no mouse activity handout. So I'm going to delete the word presentation, but it says hashtag no mouse activity handout, and it's in big sans serif bold font. Well, it's not bold, but it looks bold because it's real big. That's great. It looks like I've got a heading 1, or at least a title, which maybe that'll show up as a heading 1. As we learned last time, it will not. But I go ahead and highlight it with my cursor. So I just grab the text with my cursor. And if I was listening with screen reading software, I would just hear no mouse activity, right? It's not going to say that it's a heading because it's not a heading. I'm not going to hear it with my screen reader, and I'm not going to see it in the style bar. I've highlighted this, and in the style bar, I see normal text. That's it. Now, I do also see in the style bar that it is Verdana, which is a nice sans serif choice. That's a great font, size 22. That's pretty cool. So I like it. I actually kind of maybe want it to be a little bigger. Or maybe just aesthetically, I actually kind of like deleting the word handout. I'm just going to say no mouse activity. I'm going to make it even bigger. Oh, it's beautiful. It's still normal text. So I'm going to go into my style bar and I see that, yes, there is a check mark beside normal text, which is what I would hear if I went into the style bar with my screen reading software. So I'm going to head down to heading 1. And I could say apply heading 1, but I don't actually know what size heading 1 is. And I just decided that size 26 was just really solid for my aesthetic design here. So I'm going to say update heading 1 to match. And now officially I've got a heading 1. And over in my nav bar or my tab view in Google Docs, I can now see that no mouse activity is number 1. What's interesting is as I look down on that tree view, I can see that there's a couple other ones. And also, when I updated heading 1 to match selection, I saw some text change below the heading 1. There are additional sections below that say for navigating within your browser and for interacting with forms and quizzes. And those are now huge. They are size 26 for Donna font. Very suspicious. I'm going to take a look at them real quick. And I'm going to see that they are in fact heading 1 and they should not be. Now, these are important sections of my flyer. They're major sections of my flyer. So I'm going to go ahead and make those heading 2. Beautiful. And I'm going to do the same here. Now, interestingly, I am loving whatever the original content author, who was me, did with this lovely column structure. Those sections for navigating within your browser and for interacting with forms and quizzes, they appear to be in lovely columns, which is a really helpful way to distribute information on the form, an effective use of white space, some nice space between the columns. But when I went into that table to edit those headings, I noticed, well, I just spoiled it. I entered into the table because it is in fact a table. When I go in there, I can see that there are some table editing options. I would hear that if I were using screen reading software. Somebody cheated, and instead of using built-in column structure, they in fact created a table and put the information in the table instead of using columns, and that is going to be really problematic. Tables are just, as I shared last time, they're not fun to navigate with screen reading software in any scenario. But when they're not designed accessibly, when it's not a representation of data with a clear header row or clear header column or both, and no merge cells, because as we talked about last time, our authoring capabilities in Google Docs and Microsoft Word are limited such that we are unable to scope multiple cells to a single header cell in a row or column. This is not an appropriate use of a table. So now some of you may be wondering, wow, we kind of skipped ahead because there's stuff up here that might be inaccessible. It's fine. I'm jumping around because it's what jumped out to me quickly. I saw those should be heading 2s blow up as new heading 1s, and that was just very scary. So I'm going to go ahead and go to I can't remember if it's insert or format. There it is. In my format tab in Google Docs, there's columns. Before I do that, actually, I'm just going to go ahead and grab my text. If I grab stuff, and this is actually a good opportunity to share, if I grab stuff from within a table and then I go to paste it, there's a solid chance, depending on how much I grab, that it's going to grab everything and just put it in a table. And so what I actually want to do is grab material by cell if it's a small enough table, or I grab all of it and I press Control-Shift-V on my keyboard to paste as unformatted text. So it doesn't pull any of that gross table formatting with it. So I'm going to paste this in here. I just grabbed the for navigating within your browser section. Now I'm grabbing the for interacting with forms and quizzes section. And I'm putting it down. So now I'm grabbing all of the text now that it's been pasted outside of a table. And I'm going to go into format, columns, 2 columns. There we go. So visually, oh, there's Sparky. Visually, it looks pretty similar. And I apologize. I'm so sorry. Whoa there, Sparky. I'm not talking to any of you. Sparky is the name of my computer, and sometimes we talk to each other. So for navigating within your browser, for interacting with forms and quizzes. So I'm going to go down here. I put it in columns now. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the table. The table is gone. My misused table is away. Now looking at those columns, I've got my for navigating within your browser section, for interacting with forms and quizzes section. Does anyone who can see my screen, does anybody have a guess what else remains incorrect in this column structure?
Are the lists correctly formed or?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Daniel. Yeah, if I go under for interacting with forms and quizzes, if I were to listen to my screen reading with my screen reading software, I would hear list of 4 items. Item 1, use your tab key to move back and forth between form fields or quizzes. Because for those of you who haven't had a chance to review the remainder of the document, it's a set of tips and tricks for someone to navigate with their to navigate without their mouse and engage using their keyboard, which will ideally help them to discover some basic navigation issues. And that's a nice bulleted list. But in the for navigating within your browser section, visually I see 1, 2, 3. But if I listened with my screen reading software, or I just try to grab those numbers, it's not an actual numbered list. It was just typed 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to go into my menu and use the built-in list structure. And then I'm going to remember to delete the typed numbers were there. Because for those of you who use screen reading software, I'm sure you know how annoying it is when someone does take the steps to remediate a document. So you hear list of 3 items. Item 1, to visit a new website. Item 2, use your up and down arrows. So I remembered to delete those extraneous numbers. Visually, one of the things I'm noticing, because visual design is very important for accessibility too, I am noticing that there's some weird spacing going on above my heading 2s. I'm going to remove the space before the paragraph. I went to my line and paragraph spacing menu and removed those so that the columns were balanced effectively. So now that I fixed those columns, because they were right in front of me. Oh my gosh, it's a table. Oh my gosh, why do we have extra heading 1s? I'm going to go back up to the top. I fixed my heading 1. It's now no mouse activity. I've got 1 heading 1, at least so far. I haven't checked the rest of the document. Beside the no mouse activity, thankfully using column structure, I've got no mouse activity, and then I've got the Portland State University Office of Information Technology logo. which I'm adjusting a little bit because it feels like it's in the wrong place. But I'm going to check. I'm going to right click or Shift F10 if you're on a Windows computer. I apologize, I'm a Windows girl. So I'm gonna look at my alt text. My alt text is in fact blank. Now, again, thinking about alt text, it's about content and function. The content and function of this logo is not to describe the logo. It is what is the intent of the logo? The intent of the logo is to say this is a Portland State Office of Information Technology document, right? I've stamped it with the logo. So I'm simply going to say Portland State University logo. Whoa there, Sparky. Featuring the Office of Information Technology. I could also say Office of Information Technology, Portland State University logo, but that feels a little clunky to me. And I'm going to say the thing that I'm sure many of you have said when you've shared screens in the past. Please forgive the fact that I am going to misspell a lot. I swear I'm a good typer, but the second I'm on screen, and my most common on-screen misspellings are accessibility and disability, embarrassingly. All right, so I've got my heading 1. There's a column structure going on here for the image. Portland State University Office of Information Technology logo. Excellent. Below it is the No Mouse Challenge logo, which I likewise see has no alt text. And because I used right click or Shift F10 to pull up the image options for the Portland State University Office of Information Technology logo, the No Mouse logo, the image options panel was already open. It's going to stay open until I close it or until I open a different panel. So when I selected the No Mouse logo with my cursor, it immediately showed the same panel with a blank alt text. And this is the No Mouse logo. I know because I chose it. I pulled it from the No Mouse site, where of course it does have alternative text because it's UW. So I am going to go ahead and pop it in here. This is the No Mouse logo. All right. So moving over, there is a paragraph describing the No Mouse Challenge from UW's Do It Center. This is its own section. So I see that it is a heading structure, hashtag No Mouse Challenge linked from UW's Do It Center linked. That's an appropriate use of a heading. It's indicating a section, a paragraph, but it is a heading 3. We don't skip heading levels, do we? The last heading that we engaged with was the heading 1. It's a no mouse activity. So this should be a heading 2. There's no heading 2 section above it that this is a part of. This is its own section. So I'm going to repair that heading structure. And again, there are some automated accessibility checkers that will catch skip level headings and some won't. Oh, no, my chat window wasn't showing up. I am so sorry, y'all. I'm going to double check real quick and see what I have missed. Let's see. Oh, a good reminder about closed captioning. Yes. There, gross tables. Mo shared that the Word document has some gross tables in it. Yes, definitely tables should not be used for layout. They should be used for displaying data, heading rows, heading columns. And yes, Wendy, excellent tip. MS Word heading styles can be modified from default styles. Default heading styles can be modified in Google Docs as well. Absolutely. Oh, and Sagan, am I pronouncing that correctly? I'm seeing a comment from Sagan. Yes, okay. Editing your normal template. Absolutely. This is my favorite. You can do that in Google Docs. So and this is gonna sound kind of weird, but we're gonna do it at the end of the document, because the way that you do it, it's similar to Microsoft Word. I'm gonna design this document the way that I want it to be. Or actually, you know what? Maybe we won't do it at the end. We'll just start with a new one. So if I want to make my default styles, I can make my default styles in Google Docs. So every time I create a new doc, it's automatically going to use the styles that I want. And because it's saved as a default style, let's say somebody else on your team, or, you know, you're working on a collaborative project and they share something with you, you can say, hey, sorry, everyone, if it appears controlling, but I'm going to go ahead and change this document to my default style. And so you can actually change somebody else's document to your default style when it's open in your Google account. So one of the fastest ways to do it, you can either design your own document. You can either use a document you've designed, or if you want to just set it up like I'm doing right now, I'm going to go ahead. I don't usually go past heading 4. So I'm typing heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4 in my document. On a brand new document, I want my font to be Verdana. I want my spacing, whoopsie daisies. I want my spacing to be 1.15, put a little bit of extra space between those lines. I want my normal font to be 12-point minimum, right? So let me see, let me type normal here at the bottom. So heading 1, I'm going to manually take the word heading 1 that I typed, and I'm going to say, you know what, I want it to be size 24. And I would always like there to be a space after a heading 1 to give it a little bit of white space before I kick off my document. So I'm going into my paragraph and line spacing options, and I'm adding a space after the paragraph. So now it's Verdana size 24. I've added a space after the paragraph. I am going to go to my style dropdown, which now says normal because all I've done is modify some normal text. I'm going to go down to options, or actually, excuse me, I'm going to go to heading 1 and say update heading 1 to match. So now this is heading 1, but it's only heading 1 for this document. So keep following. I'm going to go to heading 2, the typed word heading 2, and I'm going to say, let's go 18. So this is heading 2. I've made it size 18 font. And again, I'm going to go ahead and add a little space after the paragraph. So that each time I add a heading 2, it's kind of heralded. And I'm going to go again to my style menu, and I'm going to update heading 2 to match. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to heading 3. I'm going to make it size 14. And now I'm going to update heading 2 to match. And heading 4, we're just going to keep it 12, but we're going to make it bold. And I'm going to go to my style menu and update heading 4 to match. And then I'm going to grab my normal, which is just that Verdana size 12, 1.15. And I'm going to go to normal and say update normal text to match. Now I'm going to go to that same style menu, and at the bottom of the menu is an options submenu, and I'm going to say save as my default styles. This is my default style now. Every time I start a new document, this is what it's going to use. And if I'm in somebody else's document, I can go in and I can highlight the whole document and go to the style menu and go to options and say use my default styles. I usually try to tell somebody before I do that so that I don't just look like a very controlling busybody. But you know, I mean, if you hop into a document and it's like size 10 Garamond font, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. All right, again, catching up on chat. Let's see, default style per signed in account. Yes, Alice, thank you. Sorry, and I'll repeat that. Alice shared in the chat that you can only set 1 default style per signed in account. And that's true. So I just changed my default styles through that demonstration for the rest of my documents, but I can update that anytime. Let's see. Okay, scroll to the side. Oh, thank you. Someone pointed out that we can't see the full navigation pane anymore on the screen. So I've gone back there on the no mouse document and we are caught up. So I'm gonna make that chat window real big, so I don't miss anymore. I apologize. I just got caught up making this document accessible because it's really stressing me out, folks. All right, so we're back in our no mouse activity document. We've got heading 1, no mouse activity, graphic, Portland State University logo featuring the Office of Information Technology, graphic, no mouse challenge logo. Then we've got a heading 2, no mouse challenge from UW's Do It Center, and then a little paragraph that explains what it is. But it is in fact a little paragraph. For those of you who can see the screen, it is so little. It is size 10 font. That's gross. Okay. We really want to have at minimum 12-point font, because this document, while the intent is to distribute it as a digital flyer too, for an online activity, it is also intended for print to hand out at that party in the park booth. And size 10 font, that's pretty small. So I'm going to highlight this. And now that I've fixed my default styles, I don't have to go in and change the font to Verdana and change the font size to 12. I'm just going to go to my style menu and I'm going to switch to normal font. And it changed it all to that nice 1.15 spacing. It changed it to Verdana, size 12 font. What I'm noticing is that, and I should have mentioned this before, I also noticed that when I used my normal text, it seemed to fix something else too. It fixed the size. It went from size 10 to size 12, but it also switched it from Times New Roman to Verdana. And that solved 2 problems. One, switching to a sans serif font that's going to be just a little bit easier to read for a lot of folks with cognitive learning disabilities. Like dyslexia and ADHD, but also it also, for the rest of the document, added a design consistency, because good design is accessible design and accessible design is good design. And I don't know about y'all, but if you've ever experienced one of those delightful 10-page syllabuses from an instructor, it's got a couple different fonts in it, or the reverse, if you're an instructor and you've received an essay that's been turned in that has several different fonts, which is probably an indication that somebody has grabbed a paragraph from Wikipedia. But it's very jarring in terms of the reading experience. And so it made the font a little more readable, and it also applied a design consistency. So I'm going to keep going in the document. And I see oh, Alice sent a great tip in the chat. It's a great idea. If you have a separate headings document with heading fonts and sizes structured the way we demonstrated, heading 1 through 4 and normal listed with applied font sizing, but with multiple heading sample sets on one page, you can easily update your default heading set. That's a great idea, especially if you're a content creator who is often tasked with designing different kinds of documents, right? Like maybe you're an instructional designer and you've got flyers that you create. You've also got a syllabi that you create. Having multiple defaults is a great idea. Someone also popped in the question, will you review why the tables were bad? That's a great question. It is because a table was used as a layout tool. I wanted to see some text side by side. It wasn't data. There's not any heading structure associated with it in terms of a header row or header columns. This is not like what I ate for my meals yesterday. And I've got a table and it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then I've got my data in the columns. I've got an apple. Oh, that's much healthier. I had coffee for breakfast yesterday, so that would be a very small table, but which I don't recommend. Have more than coffee. but it's not a representation of data. And tables can be difficult to navigate using screen reading software. And just in terms of good design and accessible design, they should not be used as a layout tool. You want to use the built-in layout tools, typically called columns, and they are called columns in Microsoft Word and Google Docs, but you may notice in other content authoring tools, in some learning management systems or web content management systems, they're sometimes called grids. But you want to use the built-in layout structures and use tables only for representations of data. And when you use them for representations of data, including your header rows and columns. And thank you. Daniel added a lot of extra context there that is really helpful. Actually, that's a really great summary. They're extremely confusing when using a screen reader when they're being used for layout and not to convey actual data tables. There are some fantastic resources. Daniel just posted one from webaim.org. And both WebAIM and the World Wide Web Consortium have some really good, and I'll grab the links before the end of today's session, but some really great resources for kind of understanding how screen readers navigate tables. And it's very helpful in understanding, well, frankly, the importance of not using merged cells in content authoring tools that don't give you the ability to make those accessible. Because when you have multiple cells that point to a singular header cell, you have to be able to scope it correctly. Otherwise, using screen reading software, you're just kind of sitting with a random piece of data, 1.304. And you've got to kind of move around with your arrows on your keyboard and try to see if you can figure out what the header cell is. What is the 1.4.1? Let's see, someone added, I was having issues with keyboard shortcut for pasting unformatted text in Microsoft Word. Yes, Control-Alt-V brings up the paste special box, but also your macros can get you straight there. And macros are different than short keys. Short key is you press each key at the same time. So if I want to paste unformatted text in a Google Doc, I'm going to use a short key, Control-Shift-V, because Control-V is just paste. So if I'm grabbing something from somewhere and pasting it, a quote from a website or something, and I'm popping it into my Google Doc and I just press Control-V, it's going to pull a bunch of weird formatting from wherever it came from, which could be very problematic for folks using adaptive technology. So I'm going to press Control-Shift-V. It's a shortcut. So I press Control-Shift-V and I'm holding all three keys down at the same time. Macros in Microsoft Word are not the same as short keys. You do not hold them down at the same time. One at a time. You press Alt to pull up the ribbon. Let's see, press Alt to press up the ribbon, H to get to your home, V to get to your paste options, and T for unformatted text. So Alt, H, V, T is going to get you directly there. But really, Alt is going to pull up the ribbon and then you can navigate with your arrows to get where you want to go. All right, back to the document because I know we're running out of time and I do want to get through one full example. I noticed that under my paragraph about the no mouse challenge, there is actually a new section called a couple of keyboard navigation tips. Well, that should be a heading too. Interesting, because my columns for navigating within your browser and for interacting with forms and quizzes come below that. Those are subsections in my couple of keyboard navigation tips sections. That's what I get for skipping around the document. So these should be heading 3s. Because they are subsections in my couple of keyboard navigation tips heading 2 section. Well, all of a sudden things are starting to look so much better in my navigation pane on the left. I keep calling it navigation pane because that's Microsoft Word, but again, they call it what do they call it now? Show tabs and outlines. Now that tabs are a thing in Google Docs. Now it's looking really clean. I can visually see that there's a no mouse activity and then below it, just a little indented is no mouse challenge from UW's Do Center and Do It Center and a couple of new keyboard navigation tips. And then down, but indented is for navigating within your browser and for interacting with forms and quizzes, but I am seeing that there is one more thing in my navigation pane. One more heading, maybe. I'm gonna look at it and oh no, I see that the last heading in my navigation pane is not a heading. Somebody wanted to accentuate a very cool quote by Sir Tim Berners-Lee. The power of the web is in its universality, accessed by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential impact. They wanted to end the flyer with a really great quote. I don't blame them. It's a great quote. But they decided that they liked that built-in heading 3 structure. They liked the way it looked. They didn't realize that headings are only supposed to be used for structural navigation. So unfortunately, that's a misuse of a heading. I'm going to go back and switch it to normal text. That doesn't mean it has to stay at normal text. I went to my styles and I switched it to normal text. I could do something different. There's actually a bunch of built-in styles, so I could format a built-in style for block quotes and how I want them to look. In this case, I'm just gonna manually make it, I'm gonna make it cool. I'm gonna make it bold. Let's see, I'm gonna make it centered. I'm gonna make it really big. I might even, whoa, I just made it very big. It does not need to be that big. Let's just cool our jets there. Okay. Do still want this all to fit on one page. Doesn't mean I'm going to sacrifice that minimum 12 points font size, but I just made it very large. It is bold, 18-point font. Folks are definitely going to see this quote as sighted users. It's just accentuated. I could additionally make it a different color to make it pop, but I'm not going to use color alone to convey meaning. I'm not going to make it, you know, I don't know, teal, a nice dark teal for good contrast. I'm not going to do that and not have another means of, okay, we're going to make it bold. We're going to make it centered. We want it to be visually accessible for folks who are colorblind as something that we want to pop. But the thing is, I did that thing again where I skipped ahead because something caught my notice in the navigation pane. So I'm going to roll back because I don't want to miss anything in this document. And there is something between my columns for navigating within your browser and for interacting with forms and quizzes. There is a cute little light bulb graphic that I am willing to bet doesn't have alt text. Oh my goodness, folks, it does have alt text. And if I had an automated accessibility tool, it would say, good job, Michelle, there is alt text behind this light bulb. The alt text is 23lgh2.jpg. Yeah, that's gonna happen a lot. If you upload a document, or sorry, if you upload an image into a document, often it will helpfully render the alt text for you based on the file name. But 23lgh2.jpg is not going to be helpful to anyone using screen reading software. So I'm going to switch that to light bulb, which arguably a decorative image, but contextually, I'd kind of like to have some alt text here because it's a light bulb to indicate a cool little call out that I put next to it. Might be difficult for some of you to see what that call out is, however, because I just decided to get real fancy in designing this document and thought, you know what, I'm going to use a different font to just pop, you know, I'm going to use, not a different font, excuse me, a different font color. Cause I want this thing to stand out. It's cool block quote. But I chose a light gray. Now, one of the things I'm going to want to do throughout my document is double check the color contrast. I already know, and I didn't check this for you, but I already know that I checked my normal font earlier and made sure that it was still black, which is going to be that 60 hex key. It's a good thing to remember. But if I were to check this font, And I am going to go into my color palette and I'm going to check. This is a, let's see, it's 6 9s is the hex key. I went to my color palette to check it. And I'm going to go ahead and the background in my WebAIM color contrast checker is 6 Fs. That's white. I'm going to go into my foreground and I'm going to put in my 6 9s. Oh, I put 5 9s and the WebAIM color contrast checker said, what are you trying to do? It's not working. Gross. For those of you unable to see my screen, 2.84 to 1 is my ratio. This was a very bad design decision on my part. Now, I can think about using another color later, but for now, I'm just going to go to normal font. All right. I've already kind of set it aside with a, popped it with that light bulb idea. Many people don't realize the importance of digital accessibility and the ways in which it allows for equitable access to information for all web users. If you're interested in learning more about digital accessibility, visit go.pdx.edu/digital-accessibility for more information on how you can begin designing your digital content with accessibility in mind. I was able to read that now as a person with low vision because now the font is black on white, which is going to be accessible contrast. Wow, that tiny little Google Doc took us all the way almost to the end of the hour, but probably because I jumped around it a lot and did spend a lot of time trying to destroy it this morning. Does anybody have any questions in these last few minutes?
I do.
Oh, sorry,
Oh.
go ahead.
Sorry, I just jumped in. Yeah, I do have
No,
one.
that's fine. Daniel,
and
you
it-
first and then Wendy had a
Yeah,
question.
it's kind of a philosophical one. So
Sure.
for me, I really always go to headings and think a lot about them. So in this document, if it were shared digitally, what's your opinion about, so you have the quote at the bottom, 2 quotes, the quote at the very bottom and then that little call out.
Yeah.
Isn't it sort of implied as part of the last heading 3? Or would people just using the screen reader kind of pick up on, this sounds different, so I kind of intuitively
You're right.
understand?
No, that is an absolutely great
Okay.
point. And honestly, it's one of the things we talked about in the presentation at the last session, that if you could focus on 3 major things, heading structure, heading will always be the number 1 for me. Headings, links, and alt text as the major 3. And thinking critically about your headings might be the most important thing you can do
Okay,
for navigation of a document. And you're absolutely right. Because I've organized my document with heading structure and I've got like a section to explain the no mouse thing. I've got a section for keyboard navigation tips, and I don't herald the next section with that block quote as anything new, then absolutely. A screen reader user would expect that that's just a continuation of 4 interacting with forms and quizzes.
Right.
Because that's how I've designed the document. And so a more accessible way to design this document, whoopsie daisies. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's being super grumpy. There we go. All right.
Reminds me of Word, yeah.
Yeah.
Word processing docs are always
Yeah, once
touchy.
I'm in column structure, it's like, oh, I'm gonna mess with
Yeah.
this. But since I won't do it now, but what I would do is after that last column for interacting with forms and quizzes, adding a heading that says other important tips or
Oh yeah, okay.
something like that, right? Or like closing thoughts or something like
Right.
that. So that's absolutely a good point. Real quick, I want to answer, Wendy had a question. Can you explain why link URLs are used in this document? Yes, because this document is intended to be distributed both digitally and in print. So I've used URLs in this document, clean, accessible URLs. I've used URL shorteners to make them as accessible and readable as possible for people using screen reading software. But I have specifically chosen to use URLs as this is, while it will be distributed digitally, its primary method of distribution will be in print at the Party in the Park booth. And I want people to be able to navigate to those additional resources by typing a URL in their address bar. Okay, oof, right at 11 a.m.
Thank you, Michelle. Great,
Michelle.
great presentation. Really enjoyed it. It's
Yes,
helpful.
we thank you for this great presentation and walking us through some important things. We want to remind everyone that the next session will be on Thursday, May 1st at 10 a.m. And you can go to northwestheat.org to register for that workshop. Thanks for joining us, everyone.